Welcome to the fifth class on the structure and details of the second Beis Hamikdash. In this class, we're going to learn about the Ezras Yisrael, which is the first section here when you enter into the Azara. So the size of the Ezras Yisrael was just 135 amas by 11 amas, which is around 212 feet by 17 feet. To get an idea of that size, we could see over here that it's the sidewalk on Kingston Avenue, and it goes from Eastern Parkway down to Union. It's not even the whole sidewalk. The sidewalk is around 18 feet, and the Ezras Yisrael is closer to 17 feet. Here we could see it from another perspective, so it's just this sidewalk area from Eastern Parkway until Union. Now let's learn about what was in the Ezras Yisrael. So in the Ezras Yisrael, there were 8 leshachos, 8 rooms. There were 3 to the north, 3 to the south, and then there was one on each side of the entrance into the Ezras Yisrael. So let's start by learning about the 3 leshachos to the north. So the 3 leshachos to the north were the Lishkas Hagazis, which was for the Sanhedrin Gdela. Then there was the Lishkas Hagela, which had a well in it where they would draw water from for all the needs of the Beis Hamikdash. And then there was the Lishkas Ha'etz, which is a place for the Kohen Gadol where he slept for 7 days before Yom Kippur when he had to stay and live in the Beis Hamikdash. Now for the Lishkas Hagazis, since the halacha is that Ein Yeshiva Ba'azara Elo L'malchei Beis David Bilvad, which means the only person allowed to sit in the Azara is a king from Beis David, so therefore part of this lishka, the main part of this lishka, is actually outside of the Azara, so that this way the Sanhedrin were able to sit. Now the main thing that this Sanhedrin Delo, this Bezdin Agadol did, was that they would basically determine who is a kosher kohen and who is not. Another thing about the Lishkas Hagazis, that it was actually in this Lishkas Hagazis where they did the lottery every day to see who's going to get which part of the daily Avodah. There's different reasons given for the name Lishkas Hagazis. Either it's because of the stones that they were made out of Avnei Gazis in honor of the Sanhedrin Gdela, or it comes from the lashon of Havdalah and Siluk, like they separated, because they separated those who were not kosher for the kahuna from those who were kosher, or it was called Gazis, like to cut, because they were chaydech, they cut the din. In other words, they determined what the din is. Regarding the Lishkas Hagela, there's also different reasons given for the name. Either it's because the Eile Hagela, those who came up from the Gela, from the exile, they dug this well, and so therefore was given their name, or it's because of lashon Galgal, which is this thing that they would use to draw up the water. And then we have the Lishkas Ha'etz, which is the place for the Kohen Gadol. And the reason it's called Lishkas Ha'etz is because it was made out of wood. Now, just to point out, the wood had to be covered because you're not allowed to have any exposed wood in the Beis Hamikdash. And the reason it's made out of wood is because wood symbolizes Arichos Yomim, a long life. And the Kohanim Gdelim lived a long life. However, later when the Kohanim were appointed based on paying for the Kohen Gdela, and then they lived a very short life because they didn't even live out the year, so then the name changed to Lishkas Parhedrin, which means someone who's appointed by the government to serve for 1 year. And so too, these Kohanim Gdelim, they changed every year since they didn't live out the year after entering the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur. Now let's move to the 3 leshachos that were in the south. So in the south we have the Lishkas HaMelach. That's the place where they stored the salt. They needed salt for different things in the Beis Hamikdash, including for every carbon, because it says Al Kol Karbancha Takriv Melach. They also needed salt in order to salt the hides, which is the next room, which is called the Lishkas HaParva, and that's where they salted the hides, the skins of the carbon. And then we have the Lishkas HaMedichin, and that's where they would rinse the innards of the kachim. Now for the Lishkas HaMedichin, even though there was an area next to the Mizbeach where they would wash things over there as well, nevertheless they had the Lishkas HaMedichin. Some say it's because they washed over there the intestines, the more dirty part of the karbanis, which was not appropriate to wash it inside the Azara itself. Now on top of the Lishkas HaParva there was a mikvah, and this is the mikvah that the Kohen Gadol would tovel in on Yom Kippur. And so this is the 4th mikvah that we're learning about. We had one in the Lishkas HaMetzirayim, which is in the Ezras Nashim. We had one in the Beis HaMikdash. We had one on top of the Sha'ar Mayim, and now here we have the 4th one. And in order to get to this mikvah, there was a staircase that came up from the Lishkas HaMedichin. Now let's move on to the other 2 leshachos, starting with Lishkas Pinchas HaMalbish. So this is where the clothing of the Kohanim were stored. So it says that the Kohanim were divided into 24 groups, and each group had a series of 4 cubbies for the 4 different garments that each Kohen had to wear, which includes the robe, the belt, the hat, and the pants. And then finally we had the Lishkas Eisei Chavitin, and that's where they would make the Chavitin, which is a type of carbon mincha that the Kohen Gadol would bring every day. He would bring half in the morning and half in the afternoon. And there were 12 loaves in the Minchas Chavitin, and every single day the Kohen Gadol would bring 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. And then finally we have one more thing over here, and that is that around the entire Azara there was this sort of awning. So this awning is not scaled to size because it doesn't say what size it was, which often means that the size is not what's important. Either way, they had this awning around the whole Azara, and every single morning, as we mentioned in an earlier class, 2 groups of Kohanim would enter into the Azara to inspect it. So they would enter from the small door in the Beis HaMikdash, these 2 groups of Kohanim, and these Kohanim are scaled down to size. This is how big a person would be in the Azara relative to the size of the Azara. And so they would go around it every morning to inspect the Azara. For example, there could be a concern that a bird of prey dropped something that it caught, which brought Tumah into the Azara. So they would go around every morning, and they would meet by the Lishkas Esech Havitin, and once they confirmed that everything was okay, they would go back to the Beis HaMikdash, close the small door, and then open the big doors of the Beis HaMikdash, and all the Kehanim would pour into the Azara to begin the Avodah of the day. And with that, we'll end the 5th class.